warm for 2 seconds and then you get third-degree burns. Or something like that. Or you strike a match on your coat and you burn your expensive coat. Coat, match. Okay, get a picture in your mind. We'll do one more. The next item was match and razor. Razor was the next item. Some of you probably didn't even hear that I said razor. But try and get a link between match and razor. If you shave, imagine you're shaving with a match instead of shaving with a razor, and you're literally burning yourself. Or you're using a razor to try and, instead of lighting a match, you're using a razor to try and maybe light a candle or something, and you're going like this and you're striking a razor against your hand. You can literally feel that pain as you strike the razor against your hand instead of a match. So get a picture. Or you open a matchbox and there are little razors inside. Match, razor. Okay, let's go back and backtrack. Remember what I told you? Repetition is the mother of skill. So let's start from the beginning. Think of yourself. Think of yourself doing something unusual. What's the item that pops immediately into your mind? Book. Okay, work with me together. Book. From book, what does book link you to? Ashtray. You cannot forget. It's impossible. Ashtray.
Cow.
Okay, ashtray and cow. Remember, don't go ashtray coat. There's no link between ashtray and coat. It's ashtray and cow because you had a cow in the shape of an ashtray or whatever your picture was. Cow takes you to? Coat. And then? Match. And then? There you go. Razor. Now, 5 minutes ago, most of you couldn't remember more than the first 3 and a few items randomly. Now you can remember 6 of them in order. We can go backwards. I don't mean do a Michael Jackson moonwalk type thing. I just mean you can go backwards in your brain because it's the same pictures. You're not doing anything new. People think going backwards is so much harder. It's really not. It's the same pictures. You're just doing them in the reverse order. So we'll start at the end. We'll start with razor. Razor immediately links you to match. Matches. Matches link you to coat. Coat takes you to cow. And then there you go. You've already improved your memory by about 200% just by doing this exercise, because what you're doing is you're building neurons between the left and right side of the brain. You're strengthening the synapses in your grey matter and basically developing a link between the creative side of your brain, which is the right-hand side, and the logical side of your brain, which is the left-hand side. So you're forming a link between them and strengthening that process. And the more you do this, the better it will be. We could go through the entire list, and I could do all 15 with you, but that's essentially the technique. So if we get time, we'll come back to it. But I want to also show you how you remember names and faces of people. Because I think that's the thing I've been asked probably most on this cruise. And in most cruises that I do, when I work on cruise ships, when I do this sort of talk, people come up to me and say, I can never remember names of people. People introduce themselves to me and I never remember their names, and I feel so embarrassed because I don't know what to say. Let me show you how you remember names. It's easy. It's the same sort of technique. So here are the skills. First thing you need to do is listen for the name. People don't hear the name because they're not interested, or they think initially they're never going to see this person again, so they don't need to remember the name. So they hear this in their brain. Hi, my name is... That's what they hear. And they think, and then 2 seconds later they realize, oh my word, I don't know this person's name. This is quite embarrassing. What do I do? So this is the first thing you need to do, is focus on the name. If somebody says their name to you, it will either be a common name that you're familiar with already, or it will be some unusual name. For example, in South Africa, we have, as you know, 11 official languages. I think you've probably heard that. We have 11 official languages. Most South Africans, almost everybody can speak English. Quite a few people can speak Afrikaans. And then depending on where you come from in the country, there are 9 different black languages, which are official languages. And then we have sign language, which is sort of an unofficial official language. So we actually have 12 languages. And you'll see, depending on where you go in the country, Natal, Durban, where we're going to on Sunday, is a Zulu area, predominantly. So they speak a lot of Zulu. Cape Town is more Xhosa and other language with different click sounds. So you'll hear different languages basically being spoken. But why did I tell you that? I'm trying to think where I was going with this. Oh yes, so in terms of names, so if somebody says a name to you and the name doesn't mean anything, it could be a name in their native language. For example, in South Africa, a very common name is a name like Thabo. Thabo means gift. Or Nhlanhla. It's quite a difficult thing to say. Nhlanhla. It's N-H-L-A-N-H-L-A. It means luck in Zulu. The word means luck. So if your parents felt that they were lucky when you were born, they would call the child Nhlanhla. So various names. Also in Afrikaans, we have a lot of different Afrikaans names with ch sounds and difficult sounds and click sounds and all sorts of different things. But if you hear a name that is not familiar to you, the important thing is to try and make it familiar to you in some way, shape, or form. So let me show you techniques for doing this. So somebody introduces themselves to you and they say, for example, they come up to you and say, hi, I'm Michael. You think to yourself, who do I know in my life whose name is Michael? You might have a brother called Michael. You might have a family member called Michael. You might know a film star called Michael. You might know somebody who lives in your street who's called Michael. And you associate, if you want to remember my name is Michael, you would associate me with that person you already know. So imagine, just get a picture, as I've shown you to do, of me talking or engaging in some way with the person whose name you already know. So when you look at me, you think, oh, he's talking to Michael. His name's Michael. And it locks into your brain, and it's very, very easy to do. So just associate the person whose name you're trying to remember with somebody who has the same or a very, very similar name. And imagine them associating. Get a picture of the two of us, or whoever you're trying to remember, talking to each other. You already have a bit of information about the one person whom you know, so to remember the other person is quite easy, and you get a link in terms of that. If it's somebody that you don't know, or a name that is maybe a Spanish name, a Portuguese name, a Xhosa name, whatever, some name that doesn't really make sense to you, then say to the person, say, how do you spell that? What does that name mean? Take an interest in the name. So pay attention to it. People are very egotistical. They love talking about themselves. And they are very flattered that you are taking an interest to notice what they are, to notice something about them and to pay attention to them. So they will be willing to engage with you. If you take an interest in their name and say, what does your name mean? It's a beautiful name. How do you spell it? And get them to write it out for you. All you're doing is you're giving your brain lots and lots and lots of different tools, different techniques to enable you to remember it. So say to him, okay, when you spell it, does it have a C in it? Or how do you pronounce this letter? Or how do you say it? Can you say it for me a few times? And then what you should try and do is repeat that name as often as possible in conversation in the next little while to allow your brain to lock it in. So say, for example, the person's name is, I don't know, Jane. And you'd say, so Jane, what did you think of the show we saw last night? Or what did you think of that presentation we've just seen? Or what are you doing tonight for dinner, Jane? And you say it a few times. So what your brain is doing is you're looking at the person, you're forming visual clues about them, and you're using their name a few times over and over again. Don't do it so that it sounds like you are almost playing a long-playing record. Say, so Jane, what do you think, Jane? What are you doing, Jane? Jane, 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 because Jane will run off to Tarzan and give up on you. But every now and then, in every 2 or 3 sentences, use the name, because by using the name, you're giving your brain every opportunity to retain information. And if it's a name, as I say, that is very unusual, break it down. Say to yourself, what does that sound like to me? What does that word sound like to me? Can I make it sound like something that would make some sort of sense in my brain with my language skills? And then try and relate it accordingly. Like there's a lovely South African word that you will probably hear a lot, lekker. Lekker, L-E-K-K-E-R. Lekker means great, nice. Everything is lekker. And also sometimes they say it's nah, which means it's really, really nice. You'll hear that word on the street all the time. This is lekker. So if, say you have to remember that word, for example, how to remember the word lekker, you could say lekker sounds like lacquer that you would put in your hair. Maybe some sort of spray. We have lacquer or something like that. Or it might sound like licorice to some people. You might say licorice is nice, it's lacquer. So anything that sounds similar that you can clue your brain to give you 1 or 2 little hints that will allow you to remember a part of the word, and then the rest will come from true memory. And it's amazing how it will work for you. You just have to hear the name. If you don't hear somebody's name properly, then just say to them, could you please repeat that for me? Could you say your name over and over again? And then in your brain, start associating it with something that is familiar to you, something that can give you a clue. And then start doing that. And as you start retaining more and more people's names, practice it with new people. Every day on the ship, you've got a wonderful opportunity to meet lots and lots of different people. So tomorrow, the next day, go and meet 2 or 3 people. And at the end of the day, go back in your brain and say, what was that lady's name? What was that gentleman's name? And see if you can recall it. And use the clues that you have. And you'll be able to remember amazing bits of information. I'll just end off with this, and then I'll give you a chance to ask me any questions if you want to for a few minutes. I am planning in the future, I love my country very, very much. I love South Africa, and I'm very, very proud to be a South African. It's given me everything. I've lived there my whole life, and I love living in South Africa, but for work purposes, I'm planning on possibly relocating partially in the near future to Europe. And just because there's so many work opportunities there, and it's much easier if you're doing cruise ships regularly to base yourself somewhere centrally in the world. So I had a choice between learning French, learning Portuguese, or learning Spanish. And I decided, doing a lot of research, that Spanish was probably the easiest language to learn. So in South Africa, we have very, very few people who speak Spanish, hardly anybody. So I taught myself Spanish from scratch, just by watching videos on YouTube, watching videos, following along with that, buying books, reading as much as I could. I was in Spain recently. I did a cruise ship a few months ago. I went and bought nursery rhyme books just to learn basic vocabulary. I watch videos all the time. I watch news bulletins, very big football matches. And the black people in South Africa are passionate about their football, extremely passionate. So I would go and fill up my car at the petrol station, and people would come and talk to me and say, "Oh, you're the commentator." And they'd engage with me and talk to me, and I'd say a few things to them in Zulu, just a few basic expressions. I can't really speak Zulu, but I know a few expressions, and I'd reach out to them. And it's amazing how it breaks down doors and breaks down barriers, and you just communicate with people and you open up to them, and they appreciate it so much more if you can reach out to them. Even if you mispronounce words, it doesn't matter. Learn a couple of words in different languages and just reach out to people on cruise ships, because they so appreciate the effort that you're making if you're willing to do that. Yeah. So just a little bit of information quickly, and then I'll give you a chance to ask questions. If you are interested in learning more or interested, I've got a page on Facebook, and I'm not trying to get you to follow my page. It's entirely if you want to stay in touch. It's called Power Brain. So one word, capital P, capital B. So Power Brain, hyphen, and then my name, Michael Abramson. So it's Power Brain Michael Abramson. And that's my page on Facebook. As I say, I put up exercises for the brain every day, not on weekends, but Monday to Friday. I do little brain exercises, motivational expressions, videos, language hints, memory tips. So if you are interested, please feel free. Just click on the page and information will come to you. If you are on Facebook, I have something on Twitter and LinkedIn also. Otherwise, you can just come and chat. You can look me up. I'm all over the internet. If you want to communicate with me, my email address is freely available. Feel free to send a message or to stay in touch. Or if you need some memory hints, I'm more than happy to be able to help you in terms of that. But I'd just like to say, before I give you a chance to ask me a few questions, thank you very, very much. It's been a really great experience for us, and I speak collectively for all the South African entertainers on board. You've really been extremely welcoming, very